San Jacinto and Pacific.
Would you send out the clear? The loud clear?
Pacific.
On the intercom. C7?
Yes, ma'am, we'll be clear, and 233 will be clear on the end for E. Edward, and so we both be official.
This is an open transmission from the southern sector. If you can hear this, you are still alive. Stay where you are. Keep the line open. At approximately 3:46 local time, Jacksonville was struck. The first detonation came from offshore, a flash over the Atlantic, silent at first, followed by a wave that tore through the harbor and the streets beyond. The night sky turned white, then red. Witnesses said it looked like dawn had come early, but the light didn't fade. It just spread. The naval base at Mayport is gone. The docks, the ships, the fuel depots, all burning. Those who managed to transmit before the network collapsed described entire vessels lifted from the water, then disappearing into fire. Within minutes, the shockwave reached the downtown district. Windows shattered in towers across the river. Bridges twisted. Entire neighborhoods near the coastline vanished in smoke. Power grids failed almost immediately. The last functioning substation overloaded and shut down before sunrise. The only light left in the city came from the fires and from the sparks that crawled across downed power lines. The air is thick with ash. Radio towers hum with residual static. Evacuation orders never reached the population. The emergency network failed before the alert could spread. Interstate 95 became a corridor of confusion. Cars colliding, engines overheating, families running on foot through the darkness. Some fled west toward Baldwin, some north toward Georgia, but most stayed, waiting for instructions that would never come. A military voice was heard over the shortwave before cutting off. Command sector compromised. Immediate blackout. All personnel relocate. No recovery possible. No further message followed. We believe the strike was targeted at the naval infrastructure, not the civilian population. But that distinction no longer matters. Residential blocks along the St. Johns River are flattened. Fires continue to spread through the suburbs. Emergency crews are unaccounted for. Hospitals are without power. The few generators that survived are reserved for field triage, but fuel is running out fast. There are unconfirmed reports of secondary impacts north of the city, possibly aimed at radar installations or communication uplinks. The sound of distant explosions has continued for hours, sometimes close, sometimes faint, always the same hollow echo that shakes the windows and stirs the dust from the ceiling. For those still in Jacksonville, avoid major roads. Stay underground if you can. Do not approach the harbor. The coastline is unstable and parts of it are collapsing into the water. Stay away from large metallic structures. Residual charge from the blast has made some areas dangerous to touch. If you still have a functioning radio, switch to low-frequency bands. The high ranges are filled with interference, possibly deliberate jamming. Use short transmissions only. Conserve power. We will attempt to send updates every hour on this frequency, if the transmitter holds. If you can hear this, know that there are others still transmitting. You are not alone. Hold the line. Transmission continues. Time of origin uncertain. Signal strength moderate. Roughly 20 minutes after the Jacksonville strike, Tampa went dark. The first reports came through fragmented military channels, scattered coordinates, confused voices, overlapping emergency codes. Then, a sudden cut. Silence followed for nearly 5 minutes before local relays began to fail one by one. At 4:07, the sky above the bay erupted. Witnesses described a pillar of light that climbed straight into the clouds, followed by a wave that rolled across the water. The impact was so intense, it flipped small boats in the marina and shattered glass towers downtown. People said it felt like the air itself folded inward before exploding outward again. The first detonation struck somewhere near the coastline, but the second was inland, centered around MacDill Air Force Base. That was the moment Central Command vanished. Every major communications uplink tied to CENTCOM and SOCOM went offline within seconds. The data cables leading into the base glowed white-hot before melting completely. A coordinated decapitation strike, precise, timed, and devastating. Local transmissions confirm multiple secondary fires throughout South Tampa. The shockwave traveled along the bay, pushing a wall of water into the neighborhoods that still stood. Highways are flooded, bridges unstable. The Howard Franklin may have collapsed entirely. No one has been able to confirm. The evacuation system failed almost immediately. Traffic cameras captured the first few minutes of chaos before losing power. Cars packed every lane of Interstate 75 and the Selman Expressway, going nowhere. People abandoned their vehicles, moving on foot with nothing but flashlights and what they could carry. A few emergency responders tried to direct them inland, but their radios cut out mid-sentence. The air near the bay is toxic. Thick smoke mixed with vaporized salt water and fuel covers the coastline. Those who tried to breathe without filters collapsed within minutes. Chemical burns reported as far as Brandon. Residents are advised to stay inside sealed structures if possible. Avoid exposure to open air until rainfall dissipates the contaminants. Military chatter captured before the blackout repeated a single command: protect command integrity. Destroy remaining equipment. No transmissions after confirmation. It's unclear who issued it. The voice was distorted, recorded through static, but the intent was clear. Whatever intelligence or control systems existed at MacDill were not to be recovered. By sunrise, the entire Bay Area was without power. Emergency generators have likely run dry. Hospitals are operating in silence without communication. Refugee groups from the coast are moving inland, some reaching as far as Lakeland. Reports of looting and fires spread faster than the authorities can respond, if any remain to respond at all. From here, the glow of the bay is still visible beyond the horizon, a dull red that doesn't fade. The sound of distant detonations continues, faint but steady, echoing through the clouds. No aircraft seen since the strike, no sirens, no official message. Tampa is no longer a command city. It is a scar on the map. If you are within range, move north or east. Stay clear of the bay. Avoid contact with the water. Avoid the smoke. And if you can still hear this transmission, you are among the last. Stay silent. Stay alive. The pattern is clear now. These weren't random strikes. Jacksonville and Tampa were chosen, not for who lived there, but for what they controlled. In every major conflict, the first goal is to blind the enemy. You take out their eyes, their voice, and their hands. Jacksonville was the voice, the naval arteries connecting the Atlantic fleet to the coast. Tampa was the mind, a city that housed command, coordination, and intelligence for operations far beyond the continent. Together they formed the backbone of the southeastern defense grid. Now, both are gone. Mayport, before the attack, held one of the largest concentrations of naval power in the eastern United States. Carrier groups docked for refueling, submarines on standby, surveillance aircraft scanning the Atlantic corridor. In an instant, that network was erased. Without Jacksonville, the Atlantic flank is blind. No early detection, no command relay, no shield for the coastline. MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa was the other half of the system. It wasn't just another military installation. It was the nerve center of CENTCOM and SOCOM. From there, missions were coordinated across multiple continents. It held communication lines to overseas operations, intelligence relays, and nuclear deterrent controls. Whoever planned these strikes didn't aim to destroy cities. They aimed to paralyze command itself. This was a message sent through precision. 2 cities hit within the same hour with 0 warning. It implies reconnaissance, satellite tracking, inside knowledge of timing and defense readiness. The attackers knew when to strike, where the signals converged, and how to erase them completely. That level of accuracy doesn't come from improvisation. It comes from months, maybe years, of quiet preparation. And yet, the political silence is louder than the explosions. No declaration of war, no official statement, no enemy identified. Only fragmented reports, burned data caches, intercepted frequencies, partial transmissions hinting at a coordinated assault from across the ocean. But the truth is simpler and harder to face. It doesn't matter who launched first. The result is the same. Command is gone. For those listening inland, understand what this means. Without Jacksonville, supply chains collapse. Fuel convoys that once left the docks every 12 hours now sit empty or destroyed. Without Tampa, there is no central authority. Orders can't travel. Defenses can't coordinate. The southern region is effectively disconnected from the rest of the country. Military doctrine calls this a decapitation strike. Remove the head, and the body flails, confused, desperate, unable to respond. The consequences are already visible. Scattered defense units acting on outdated orders, civilians evacuating in conflicting directions, rogue transmissions claiming authority they no longer have. Still, there's a cruel logic in it. By hitting both cities, the attackers didn't just cripple a region, they erased confidence. They replaced strategy with fear, and fear spreads faster than any fire. No one can say what comes next. But if this was the opening act, the next phase will not be limited to Florida. Whatever began tonight was designed to spread. Stay alert. Keep your receiver tuned. The pattern will repeat. Different cities, same intent. Blind, silence, and sever. It has been 3 days since the strikes on Jacksonville and Tampa. The smoke still hangs low over the coast, thick, oily, and unbroken. Satellite images show entire districts swallowed by fire. From above, the cities look like hollow shells, blacked out grids where light used to pulse, highways twisted into rivers of steel. Rescue operations are still ongoing, but communication remains unstable. Jacksonville's emergency command was re-established west of the river, though it's barely functional. They operate from what used to be a high school gymnasium, using battery radios and handwritten reports. The number of confirmed survivors changes every hour, sometimes up, sometimes down, as new shelters are found or destroyed by aftershocks and secondary fires. In Tampa, the Bay Area has turned into a graveyard of ships. Dozens of tankers and cargo vessels drift half-sunk, leaking oil into the black water. The smell carries for miles. Evacuation ferries are still trying to move civilians toward Clearwater and St. Petersburg, but the routes are slow and dangerous. The bridges are damaged. Some collapse without warning. Most people are now on foot, moving west with what little they can carry. Panic is spreading faster than any official statement can contain it. Residents as far as Atlanta and New Orleans are flooding stores, buying food, batteries, and gas cans. Some highways heading north are completely gridlocked, not from refugees, but from fear. Every rumor of a new target sends thousands into motion. There's talk on the airwaves about Miami, Houston, even Norfolk being next. No one knows the truth, and that uncertainty is eating at what's left of calm. The government continues to broadcast short, automated messages on the emergency bands, repeating the same phrase, "Shelter in place." Do not engage. Await official evacuation instructions, but no one trusts the voice anymore. People want faces, names, someone to tell them there's still a plan. Instead, they get static, looping commands, and silence in between. Across the southeast, shelters are overflowing. Schools, stadiums, churches, all turned into makeshift refugee centers. The air smells of sweat, diesel, and fear. Children sleep on gym floors. Old men sit with radios pressed to their ears, waiting for a sign that the nightmare isn't spreading further inland. Every few hours, there's another flash reported somewhere on the horizon. Sometimes lightning, sometimes something else. Each one sends ripples of panic through the crowds. No one dares to sleep for long. And through it all, the same question echoes on every frequency, in every whispered conversation. Is it over? Or is this just the beginning? 5 days since the Florida strikes. The sky over the East Coast feels heavier now, as if the air itself is waiting for what comes next. Everywhere the same uneasy rhythm. Silence, rumor, panic, silence again. Washington has not spoken. The president remains unseen. Official communication channels are frozen under what's being called Continuity Protocol 7, a full military lockdown of information flow. In simple terms, the government has gone dark. What remains are scattered voices, regional transmissions like this one, and the quiet hum of a nation that no longer knows who's in control. New York and Chicago are still intact, but both cities have declared a state of emergency. Curfews, military checkpoints. People are hoarding, not just food and water, but gasoline, weapons, even radios. Every antenna, every rooftop dish has become a lifeline. There are no verified reports of additional strikes, yet fear alone has reshaped daily life. Subways run half empty. Streetlights flicker in neighborhoods where no one dares to step outside. The panic spreads fastest online, or what's left of it. The major social platforms went offline last night. Now there's only the dark web chatter, fragmented voice recordings, and amateur operators trying to decode encrypted military bands. Some claim to have intercepted distress calls from the Atlantic Fleet. Others swear they heard a countdown, a single voice repeating coordinates off the Carolina coast. Nothing has been verified, but that no longer matters. People believe what fills the silence. In the heartland, cities like Dallas and Nashville are seeing surges of displaced people from Florida and Georgia. Entire families living out of cars, lining up for food rations guarded by soldiers who look just as frightened as everyone else. Small towns are turning away refugees, not out of cruelty, but fear. Fear of what they might bring, of what might be following them. The radio frequencies are cluttered with prayers, arguments, coded military chatter, and sometimes just crying. A kind of sound that tells you everything words can't. Some say the next strike won't be nuclear. They talk about EMPS, orbital weapons, or worse, something we haven't seen before. No one knows what's real anymore, only that every hour without an official voice feels like a warning. Above it all, satellites continue their silent orbit, reflecting the fires below. From space, the U.S. must look fractured. 2 cities erased, millions on the move, and a government sealed behind static. If this silence continues much longer, it won't just be panic we're fighting. It will be disbelief, the quiet collapse of trust that holds a nation together. 7 days have passed since the initial strikes on Jacksonville and Tampa. The Southeast is a landscape of smoke, silence, and shattered steel. From the air, the pattern of devastation is obvious. Highways jammed with fleeing citizens, towns abandoned, and strategic points left unguarded. The military has begun limited mobilization. Convoys of armored vehicles move cautiously north and west, escorting humanitarian aid and securing perimeters around key infrastructure. Soldiers speak in clipped tones over radios, their voices betraying tension as much as discipline. Orders are fragmented. Some units operate under direct command, others under autonomous protocols, left to make decisions without coordination. Reports from the field indicate several no-man's zones, areas so heavily damaged or threatened that even the military avoids entry. Highways collapse into debris. Bridges are unusable. Entire stretches of coast are left to burn. The purpose is clear. Focus forces where they can act, avoid predictable traps, and minimize further loss of life. The threat of additional attacks lingers like a storm cloud. In Atlanta, emergency networks report sightings of unidentified aircraft over the horizon, though confirmation is impossible. Radar operators describe strange blips moving at speeds no conventional aircraft should achieve. Across Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas, civilians listen to shortwave radios, repeating coordinates, warnings, and rumors. Every flash in the sky is assumed to be the next target. Fear has become a constant companion. Within the military, the strategy is a delicate balance. Officers speak quietly about retaliatory measures. There will be a response, one senior commander stated over a secure channel, but it must be precise. Any misstep and we risk escalation beyond control. Rumors spread of special operations units already deployed offshore, waiting for targets that may or may not appear. Civilians report sudden flashes in the Gulf of Mexico at night, boats cutting through fog and waves under searchlights. Patrols or something more? No one can tell. Meanwhile, in Jacksonville and Tampa, survival is the priority. Generators hum in makeshift shelters. Children run barefoot over burned streets, carrying whatever they can salvage. Water is rationed. Food is distributed by small groups who maintain silence for safety. Every day is a negotiation with the environment. Smoke, fire, unstable structures, and the unknown threat of another strike. On the radio, messages oscillate between instructions, pleas, and static. Medical aid requested at the South Bridge. Evacuate west if possible. Unknown aircraft spotted over UI-75. Each transmission is repeated, cross-checked, then cut off. The lines are never stable for long, and yet there is motion. A slow, cautious effort to reclaim control. Military convoys, relief units, and volunteers move through the chaos, marking safe routes, establishing temporary command posts, and guiding civilians away from danger. But the fear is pervasive. Every shadow along a ruined highway, every echo in the smoke, feels like the next attack waiting to fall. The Southeast is alive, but only barely. Survival has become a matter of timing, awareness, and endurance. And everyone listening knows the unspoken truth. Nothing about this situation is permanent. The attacks may pause, but the fear will remain, shaping every movement, every decision, and every heartbeat in the days to come. The streets of Jacksonville and Tampa are silent now, but not empty. They are filled with echoes, the remnants of life, whispers of movement, the faint creak of structures that might fall at any moment. In Jacksonville, survivors move cautiously through the ruins. People walk in small groups, carrying children or whatever possessions survived the fire. Clothing is torn, faces covered with ash and soot, eyes wide with a fear that never eases. Some stop at collapsed intersections, listening for distant sounds, the low hum of metal settling, the occasional crack of a fire consuming a home, or the faint echo of voices calling out for help. Tampa is no different. The bay is black with oil and debris. Families navigate through flooded streets, sometimes wading ankle-deep through water that smells of salt and burnt fuel. Every step is measured, calculated, because one misstep could mean injury or worse. In shelters, people huddle together on concrete floors, conserving warmth, sharing what little food and water remains. Every cough, every creak, every whisper carries weight. Beyond the immediate destruction, the fear spreads. Across the southeast, even cities untouched by the initial strikes feel it. Atlanta, Orlando, New Orleans, all are on edge. Every car on the road, every flash of light on the horizon, sparks suspicion and panic. Rumors circulate of further strikes. Small towns targeted, airfields destroyed, bridges collapsing. No one knows which are real, which are imagined. But in this state, imagination is enough to send a city into flight. Communication is fractured. Radios, shortwave, and low-band frequencies carry fragmented messages. Some instructions, some cries for help, some warnings. Even these signals are unreliable. Static often overtakes the transmissions, leaving only the last words. Do not move. Danger. Keep inside. Yet survivors cling to them. Even broken, uncertain messages provide the faintest thread of connection to the world beyond the ruins. In both cities, panic is both immediate and slow-burning. Immediate when a fire flares or a roof collapses. Slow-burning when the hours stretch and there is no news, no confirmation that help is coming. Children ask questions adults cannot answer. Neighbors glance at each other suspiciously, unsure whom to trust. Fear takes root in every gesture, every hesitation, every glance at the empty horizon. And yet, amid the smoke and rubble, life persists. Small acts of survival continue. A woman helps a child climb over debris. A man breaks open a water tank for neighbors. People share blankets, ration food, whisper directions through alleys no longer marked on any map. Even in terror, some order is carved from chaos. Outside the cities, the rest of the nation watches. The unknown strikes, the sudden silence of major hubs, and the slow trickle of refugees carry one clear message. Nothing is safe. Every city, every coast, every highway feels exposed. The fear of what might come next spreads faster than any attack. For now, Jacksonville and Tampa breathe precariously, quietly through the ash. And everyone listening knows the truth. Survival is measured in hours, minutes, heartbeats. The next moment could change everything. It has been 10 days since the strikes on Jacksonville and Tampa. The country waits in silence, but beneath the quiet, gears are moving. In Washington, military command has re-established limited communication lines, buried deep within hardened facilities. Orders are being transmitted, decisions made in secure, undisclosed locations. The response is deliberate, targeted, measured. Reconnaissance flights began almost immediately after confirmation of the attacks. Satellites scan suspected launch sites. Naval task forces move into strategic positions along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts, and cyber units work non-stop to trace the origin of the strikes. Intelligence reports are fragmented, but patterns suggest a coordinated, high-level operation from a foreign power, precise, calculated, and aimed at crippling command and control infrastructure. The first wave of retaliation is not public. It is surgical. Special operations units have been deployed offshore, standing by for high-value targets. Long-range missile systems are on alert, and air wings are prepared to engage only when clear evidence confirms the location of strategic assets. The goal is not widespread destruction. The goal is to neutralize the threat before it can strike again. Civilian populations are being kept in the dark as much as possible. Information is filtered to avoid panic, but the network is fragile. News reports are limited to safe corridors, emphasizing survival and preparation. Emergency shelters are reinforced, and evacuation routes are being reopened under military supervision. Command posts are now active in inland cities, Atlanta, Birmingham, and Charlotte, coordinating the distribution of aid and the protection of remaining infrastructure. Meanwhile, troops are moving through the southeast, reclaiming sections of highway, bridges, and urban areas. Unexploded ordnance and damaged structures force a cautious advance. Units report the remnants of chaos: abandoned vehicles, blocked streets, and civilians traumatized by the attacks. Every operation is shadowed by the fear of secondary strikes, as the enemy's capacity and intent remain uncertain. Across secure channels, officials repeat one message: precision, restraint, and timing. Retaliation is imminent, but collateral damage must be minimized. Preserve command structure. Protect civilians. At the same time, reconnaissance satellites pick up unusual activity in the suspected launch zones. Military planners discuss options: immediate airstrikes, cyber infiltration, coordinated blockade. Every decision is weighed against the risk of escalation. No one wants another Jacksonville. No one wants another Tampa. Yet even as forces mobilize, fear persists. Civilians continue to evacuate. Rumors of further attacks spread faster than military advisories can counter them. Every flash on the horizon, every unconfirmed report keeps the nation on edge. The streets of inland cities are crowded with families fleeing perceived danger. Every car, every suitcase, every packed backpack is a reminder that panic moves faster than strategy. Still, amid uncertainty, the first signs of coordinated American response are visible. Command centers are alive. Troops are in motion. The retaliatory framework is in place, waiting for the signal to strike. The nation waits, quiet but alert. The enemy knows the United States will respond, precise, methodical, unrelenting, and in the shadows of smoke and fire, the first steps toward reclaiming control have begun. "15 days since the initial strikes. The country has moved from shock into action. The silence has ended. The response is deliberate, forceful, and unmistakable. Command nodes once isolated by the attacks are beginning to speak again, their voices low and precise. Orders flow through hardened channels. Reconnaissance, identification, engagement. What followed was not a knee-jerk retaliation, but a coordinated campaign, a sequence of surgical actions aimed at dismantling the adversaries to strike and to plan. Within hours of confirmation, long-range assets were deployed. Air forces struck confirmed military targets, crippling the communications and logistical hubs used to coordinate the original attacks. Missiles found hardened facilities. Imagery shows rows of infrastructure collapsing into smoke. The effect was immediate. The attackers' network, the web that enabled the initial strikes, began to fray. Special operations units moved under cover, targeting key personnel and sensitive sites identified through painstaking intelligence work. These teams worked in darkness and silence, extracting high-value individuals, disabling command equipment, and recovering data caches that point to wider networks. The precision was clinical: minimize collateral harm, maximize impact on the opponent's decision-making. Naval and air patrols enforced no-go zones where necessary, intercepting suspect movements and preventing resupply. Surveillance drones hung over suspected staging areas, their feeds relayed to analysts who picked apart patterns in real time. Every detected transmission was hunted. Every cluster of activity was cataloged and, when confirmed hostile, neutralized. On the home front, the change was visible. Supply lines that had been choked open again under military escort. Convoys moved with purpose, bringing fuel, medicine, and essentials to shelters and field hospitals. Bridges and thoroughfares were secured. Where fear had once paralyzed a population, a cautious confidence began to return. The state had acted not in panic, but with intent. For civilians in the struck cities, the strikes in return were a bitter relief. Distance did not erase the trauma, but it shifted perception. Explosions that once meant catastrophe now also signaled retribution for those who had chosen to attack. People watched distant plumes of smoke and debated whether each plume marked justice or escalation. Either way, the balance had changed. Communications from military command emphasized restraint, even as they promised consequence. We will neutralize the threat to prevent further strikes. We will avoid unnecessary harm to civilians. That balance guided every mission. The aim was strategic degradation, to remove the adversary's capacity for coordinated offensives, not to burn whole regions into ruin. Initial assessments show the campaign working. Command cohesion among the attackers appears disrupted. Logistics are hampered. Encrypted links are compromised. Intercepted transmissions reveal confusion and rerouting, a sign that centralized planning has been fractured, yet the theater remains tense. Retaliation buys space and time, not certainty. Civilians are told to remain vigilant, to heed evacuation orders, and to trust verified channels only. The nation has answered. The message is clear and adamant. Aggression will be met with resolve. The days ahead will determine whether that resolve restores stability or deepens the conflict. But for now, the response is resolute, methodical, and unmistakable. "30 days from the first flash, the horizon begins to shift. What started as a night of fire has moved into a month of calculated pressure, and now, slowly, an answer has come. The opposition's organized offensive capacity has collapsed, not with parades or proclamations, but with silence. Empty command nets, abandoned staging areas, and a surrender carried on channels that once carried only coded intent. The surrender arrived not as a single moment, but as a collapse of systems. Supply lines failed. Communications that once threaded their forces together fell apart, rendering coordinated action impossible. Under relentless, disciplined pressure, strikes aimed at arteries of command and the precise removal of key nodes, the machinery that made those early attacks possible simply stopped. Where there had been a web, there is now a series of broken wires. Across the field, small groups laid down arms. Aerial corridors once choked with activity grew quiet. Naval movements stalled. In remote pockets, skirmishes flared, then faded. The larger structure, the center that ordered and planned, acknowledged that it could no longer sustain a campaign. They sought terms. They offered surrender. The message was terse, mediated through intermediaries and encrypted channels now under watchful eyes. For civilians in Jacksonville and Tampa, for the families who spent nights in basements and gymnasiums, the news arrived in fragments. A whispered confirmation on a handheld radio, a bulletin posted on a makeshift board, a relay operator's exhausted laugh. Relief does not sweep away loss. It does not rebuild what the fires took, nor does it fill the empty beds of those who did not return. But relief changes the tenor of tomorrow. It opens a narrow space to breathe, to count, to mourn, and to begin the slow labor of repair. There is another story beneath the military logs and satellite images, the story of a people tested and not broken. For every shuttered storefront and burned block, there are lines of neighbors helping neighbors, clinics running on borrowed time and fuel, and volunteers moving with a resolve that does not ask for credit. The strain has been immense, the grief deep, but there is a stubbornness that does not yield. Communities organizing cleanups, kitchens forming under open canopies, teachers tutoring children by flashlight. It is a quiet endurance, practical and relentless. Leadership, now visible and speaking plainly, frames the victory with caution. Officials speak of restraint and of rebuilding, but also of memory. The message is unambiguous. Aggression was met and defeated. The nation defended itself. The calculus of any future attack must account for an unmatched will to respond. There is a vow, repeated across official lines and in the hushed conversations of townsfolk. The nation can absorb pain, but it will answer pain in kind, and it will not forget. Globally, the surrender ripples outward. Allies step in with aid, with engineers and medicine. Neutral states watch navigational lanes open and trade routes tentatively resume. Institutions that once bent under the weight of fear begin to reassert routines. Yet the world has changed in ways that will be measured for years. Alliances recalibrate, defenses are hardened, and arguments over accountability will shape diplomacy for a long time. This chapter closes not with triumphalism, but with the hard light of consequence. Victory here is not the erasure of cost. It is the decisive end of a campaign that threatened to unravel normal life. The people who endured the worst now stand in a landscape of rubble and memory, and with steady hands, they begin to rebuild. The final voice in this transmission is neither boastful nor vengeful. It is resolute. Let it be recorded that when struck, the nation answered with force and with purpose. Let it be recorded that the people who lived through the dark days stood firm, sustained one another, and carried forward. And let it be remembered, endurance does not mean passivity. It means surviving, learning, and ensuring that any who would inflict such harm know they will face a response as determined as the nation they challenged.